All right. So we are Dr. Smith would just join later, anytime. So yeah, thank you guys for showing up. And so I'm Ahmad of Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, and a member of the Alumni Affairs Subcommittee of the Student National Medical Association. Thank you so much to you guys for coming on and speaking with us today. So yeah, this is just the Sowing Seeds series that for SNMA. And today's special topic is pursuing your passions outside of medicine. We assembled the all-star cast for this panel, so we're really excited to just get to speak and speak with you guys and everything. So we do have some questions that were submitted and stuff like that, and we'll be monitoring chat from the live stream to ask. But if there are comments that you guys want, or comments or questions that you guys want to particularly add or ask each other, feel more than welcome to. There's a lot of flexibility in that. So yeah, so like I said, I'm Ahmad from the Alumni Affairs Subcommittee. If we would like, just a quick introduction, or however long you guys would like to take, just introducing yourself, what you do, and maybe just a little quick, or not, just walking us through your path through medicine. However much you guys are willing to share is how much we're more than happy to hear. Oh, there's Dr. Smith. Yes. So happy to have you, Dr. Smith. Was just about to do introductions, just about who you are, where you practice in medicine, and if you're comfortable just walking us through your path to maybe how you got to where you are before we start getting into some of the questions. So whoever would like to start.
Well, I was. Okay. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I can start. I'm Oyetewa Oyerinde. Y'all can hear me, right? Okay, yes. I go by Tewa for short, and I'm a dermatologist. I currently practice at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. I'm in academics, and we'll have a chat about that later maybe. But yeah, and then in terms of my passions outside of medicine, I'm also a spoken word poet and an artist. And so I try to figure out how to combine medicine and poetry and art and things like that. In terms of my journey to medicine, I kind of did always want to be a lot of things in life. Even as a kid, I as many of us did, read Ben Carson's book back in the day, anyway. But, I read Think Big and wanted to be, a pediatric neurosurgeon as a kid, and then switched that to just pediatrician, and then switched to OB, ortho, and then finally derm. So I've been all over the place. Went to Howard for undergrad in Washington, D.C., did my medical school at University of Illinois in Chicago, and then did my dermatology residency at the Harvard program in Boston. And, I came to dermatology, like I said, I didn't know I wanted to be a dermatologist. I just knew that I wanted to take care of underserved populations. And when I got introduced to dermatology, actually during a research year that was not for dermatology at first, I decided at that time, I found a lot of joy in the fact that I was going to be able to make a difference in a field where there weren't a lot of Black dermatologists and not a lot of people focusing on patients of color and the conditions that affect patients of color, and especially women of color. So my passion within dermatology is hair loss and pigmentary disorders. And so in my most recent role at Baylor College of Medicine, I founded the Skin of Color clinic and program there. And so I focus on, like I said, pigmentary disorders, hair loss, and then also lupus, some rheumatoid conditions, as they affect women of color, especially. So hopefully that was a good enough rundown, and excited to talk to you all today.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that was wonderful. That was wonderful.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ade Ashnubi. I am currently a second-year emergency medicine resident at UPenn. Dr. Smith is my attending, so happy to see her here. I'm from New Jersey. I went to Brown for undergraduate medical school. I was part of an 8-year program called the Program in Liberal Medical Education, which was great because I didn't have to take the MCAT. And the focus of that program is to actually focus on your passions outside of medicine. So this is a great place to be. Some of my interests include documentary filmmaking, photography, and writing for the lay press. While in medical school, I independently produced a documentary called Black Motherhood Through the Lens, which is about 4 Black women's experiences in navigating the reproductive healthcare system. And also starting from med school into residency, I've written for the lay press, such as Glamour Magazine, Teen Vogue, Washington Post, which has really been a great experience. This journey really started for me in high school. That's when I actually picked up my camera for the first time and created a documentary about obstetric fistula. For those of you who don't know, that's a birth injury that's caused by prolonged and obstructed labor. And that's where I really started getting interested in women's health. And I think, this idea of pursuing your passions outside of medicine and having a less traditional path actually came from my mom, who's a doctor as well. She was an anesthesiologist, board certified, and actually switched to occupational and environmental health. And she's just had a number of careers. Now she's into hyperbaric medicine. And so I've been really blessed to have her as a role model to show me that, our world in medicine is endless and you can really do as you like. So in the future, looking to continue doing film, writing, and I actually just launched an initiative called Creatives for Social Change in Medicine to teach folks how to hone in on their creative interests to advance health equity. So happy to be here.
Dr. Smith, would you like to go?
Yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Kristen Smith. Thank you, SMA, for having me. I am an attending physician in emergency medicine at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. And as Addie already said, we work together. She is one of the fabulous residents there. She is amazing. So my journey in medicine, I got the idea to go to medical school at a younger age. When I was a child, I had ulcerative colitis, and because of that, I was in and out of the hospital, and I ended up having a colectomy at a pretty young age. And I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician based on this exposure. And then once I got into high school, I really liked the medical, the sciences, biology, anatomy, those courses in high school. So that kind of made me interested in the sciences. And then once I was an undergrad at Case Western, I decided to become pre-med. I did not have a traditional path. I had some struggles with the MCAT, which can be common for a lot of people. Don't let that get you down or deter you from your path. So I did take some time off and did some informal grad classes at Case, and then also retook the MCAT at the time, also was doing some health disparities research. And then I went to medical school at the Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine in New Jersey. Completed my residency in emergency medicine at Einstein in Philadelphia, and then now I am an attending at Penn. My kind of interest outside of medicine is really how to teach health equity concepts in a way that is practical. So thinking about, pain management disparities and things of that nature, how do you actually take knowledge of these issues in medicine and then apply them to the bedside? So how does that change with how you treat your patients coming in with acute pain, or how you address microaggressions in the clinical setting? So figuring out ways to practically apply some of these issues tackle some of these issues is really the crux of what I like to do outside of clinical medicine.
All right. Ladies first. So I'm Stephen. I'm an anesthesiologist, critical care medicine physician, currently practicing in Florida. My pathway to medicine, so I was a Navy brat, moved around a bunch. My parents were kind of one step from poverty, worked their way through college, but wanted us to do more and have more opportunities than they had. That included music lessons. So as a kid, I was taking piano lessons. I hated it, and then kind of grew to love it. And my plan was to go into the military, follow my dad's footsteps, become a chaplain in the military. But I was going to get there by studying music. So I was a music major when I first started out. Through a series of events and exposures to medicine, I was working construction at Shands Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. that was my first exposure to medicine. I was just finishing up my freshman year of college, and that kind of made me curious. I honestly didn't know if I was smart enough or not, so I had a plan B for physical therapy, and then took the pre-med classes. The good Lord looks out for babes and fools, so I kept going. Went to Howard University for medical school. Before that, I did a one-year master's program at University of South Florida. Along the way, I've leaned heavily on music. Not that I was escaping medicine or escaping the work, but there's just something about being able to do both. I'm a solid B student. I'm not a great student, but I always had to do something on the side. So during medical school, I was playing with my church worship team. I was playing keyboard. We'd have like 3 or 4 services on a Sunday, and I do that twice a month. And that included, weekday practice. And then I picked up bass guitar, so I played that in church. But I always needed something because for me, and we can probably get into this later, medicine was a job. I enjoy it. I love helping people, but it was always a job, and music has continued to be my passion. So then I went from Howard to University of Chicago, where I did 4 years of anesthesia residency. I went into the Navy, ultimately to follow my dad and my brother's footsteps. Was stationed in Virginia for a couple of years, and then went back to University of Chicago for an ICU fellowship, and then just started kind of my first real job, I guess, as a critical care physician at this hospital in Tampa. Outside of medicine, besides music, I took that passion and started doing some audio editing and producing, and a podcast that I host, the Black Doctors Podcast, and just helps share these incredible stories, some of which you're going to hear from these 3 incredible panelists. I've just been so inspired already hearing their backstories. So thanks for the invitation, and looking forward to answering some questions.
Absolutely, yeah. That's all. Those are all wonderful. Really excited just to continue hearing about those. So I mean, yeah, you all kind of touched on the some of the passions that you guys do have, and people that have either inspired you or helped cultivate that. And I guess just building off of that, like Dr. Bradley and Dr. Austin, you guys talked about sometimes like these passions seem to have been like either from your parents or just things that you were doing when you were younger. And so for those passions and for others, like when did these come about? How did you kind of figure these things out? And how did you maintain them right on your path, whether that was through medical school, whether that was, studying for the MCAT or step 1 prep and things like that? Like how did you go about maintaining these passions and or finding the time to cultivate and discover new ones?
I guess I can start. So in terms of poetry, since I was like 3 years old, I would write little songs and stuff. I think I wanted to be a singer when I was like 3 and 4, before I was able to read Think Big. And so I really thought I would have like the talent to really sing, so I'd write all these songs. And back when, some of y'all probably don't know cassette tapes, but I would record on cassette tapes, and there's a bunch of tapes at my parents' house of just me singing songs and stuff, songs that I wrote, about food or whatever. And then, so I always had that writing for music, and thought that it would get into singing. But when I went to Howard for college, there was a dorm called Drew, and it was one of like the freshman dorm for men. And they used to have like this Sunday cipher type of thing where everybody would come Sunday nights and cram into this basement in the dorm and do poetry. And, I had already, as I had gotten older, started changing from writing music, realizing I wasn't going to have a career in singing, and writing a little bit more poetry. But I never wrote poetry for the purpose of performing. It had always been just writing stuff. And this was the first time that I just was so inspired seeing all these, college kids just getting up there, memorizing their poems, performing, everybody just being so enthralled. It was hot AF in that basement, and no one cared. We were just sitting on top of each other, listening to people's poetry. And so, yeah, being in DC has a huge poetry community, tons of open mic poetry shows, and just some of the greats, some of my favorite poets, just coming through DC and performing, and sneaking into these bars and stuff and listening to the poets. So I decided to memorize one of my poems and try to perform it there, and that's really where the performance poetry kind of became my passion, because there was just nothing, no high like, performing a poem and people, just watching people's faces, understanding what you're saying, understanding an experience you're explaining to them that maybe they've never had, or maybe even I've never had, right? Being able to write other people's experiences into a poem and share it and have people understand it. And so, yeah, just absolutely loved it. And then in terms of keeping it through the different parts of medicine, I'll be honest and say that there definitely have been times on my journey where I wasn't as connected to poetry as others, or times where I didn't have as much time to commit to it. In medical school, in Chicago didn't have as big of a poetry scene as DC did. So I would perform when I could. In DC, I used to perform like, 2-3 times a week. Whereas in Chicago, it might have happened, one time every other month or something in medical school. And so definitely it was different. And I will say, and we'll probably talk about this, or someone else can talk about this, but this concept of balance, I don't think that I ever got a good grip on balance, on my journey. Maybe now, but what I feel like is at different parts of your journey, you might be out of balance, and that might be important, right? So studying for the MCAT or studying for step 1 or something, you might not be fully balanced. You might not be like doing your passion as much as you're doing school. And there'll be other times where, you're coasting in school or you're coasting in residency, and you're able to spend a little bit more time and energy on your passions or your family or other things. And so I do think that it's like this balancing act where over the arc of my entire career, I've been balanced. But I definitely don't think that in each individual moment I was balanced. And, spending an hour a day on poetry and then, 2 hours on studying. I definitely think it was like studying for 10 hours some days and then like just not looking at a book at all for 3 or 4 days after a test. So, yeah.
You gotta, if we have time at the end, give us a poem. If we save some time at the end, poets always have like something, you always have the throwaways in your phone. So if we have some time at the end, you're gonna bless us with one.
I could do that.
All right. I appreciate that. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Who wanted to share next?
I can share briefly, but I gotta drop a mixtape in your DMs too, just to go along with the poem. Now, along the way, like Dr. Oyerindi said, I picked up music, I put music down. There's a song by the Birds it's actually scripture too, to everything. There's a season. And that's kind of what balance is for me. I would go 3 months, 4 months without touching an instrument at different times in the struggle as I was trying to get into medical school, or when I was applying and interviewing for residency. Those times just weren't conducive to playing or making music. I really got back into music once I finished residency and was in practice, and then the pandemic hit and I was actually at home a lot, and that's when I got into producing music. So don't be discouraged. Like, you got to do what pays the bills or whatever your passion is. If that passion is medicine, or you've got to study, like keep your priorities aligned, but don't be surprised if you may have to put down your passion for the time being. Just know that you'll be able to pick it up again in the future.
I can share just a little bit more about my path. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but again, like the first time I really picked up a camera was in high school when I co-founded an organization with one of my friends to support women who have suffered from obstetric fistula. And we felt that making a documentary about this condition would be a great way to raise awareness. And through that experience and seeing, just how people were able to respond to this film and, engage with a topic that didn't necessarily affect them, kind of showed me the power of like documentary film, photography, and connecting people to issues that may directly affect them or not. And so high school made that documentary, took a pretty long hiatus, didn't really do filmmaking and stuff in college. And then in medical school, there was a lot of news media about the Black maternal mortality crisis. And so I decided to pick up the documentary filmmaking again and produce the documentary, and did it while full-time medical student, was the camera woman, did the audio, did the editing, actually learned how to edit in high school. And then in college, took a digital photography course. So that taught me a lot about Photoshop and things of that nature. So all of that was super helpful in creating the film, marketing the film, submitting to film festivals, etc. And then writing, again, like I never thought that I was like a creative person, to be honest, growing up. Like I just never thought that was the case. But just like actually going down like my family lineage, like there's just like a lot of people who are creative. And I know like people of the diaspora, typically they're like, okay, you know, pursue the sciences, you know, that's more stable, which I've done. But I also feel like there are creative bones in my body that I have unearthed over time. And so it's been really nice to kind of see that in progression. But yeah, I never really thought of myself as a writer. I wouldn't say it comes super naturally to me, but I think there's a really large space for us as physicians to enter the lay press and publish and communicate things in an accessible way to the public, like Dr. Smith talked about. Because there's one thing to publish in medical journals, which I think is great. It's not my personal jam because I can barely sometimes understand what they're talking about if we're going to keep it a buck. So I much prefer to read an article in layman's terms that breaks things down in an accessible way. So that's been a little bit of my trajectory so far, and just kind of touching on balance. Again, not the best at it at all, but I really like what the other two folks said about different seasons, right? So like in residency, no documentary filmmaking has happened, right? But, you know, sometimes it's easier. Okay, like I want to write this piece on this topic. All right, you know, I have this stretch of time, let me write that, you know, and then later on maybe pursue film, you know. So that's kind of where I've been at. Yeah, and just keeping it real with yourself, because residency, it's a full-time job, and I learn that every day. So yeah.
I think everyone has kind of already touched on everything, but as far as balance, as everyone has said, it fluctuates, right? Especially in the emergency department. Sometimes you're working 6 shifts all 1 week, and then the next week you're working 2 shifts. So obviously there's going to be times where you have more or less time to devote to your passions outside of medicine. And I think you have to realize that that is okay. And that doesn't mean that you are less of yourself, but you are prioritizing work and what you need to get through. Also, you know, for a lot of us here, depending on what you're doing, if you want to do writing to educate people about different chronic diseases, or you want to be an advocate in medicine, a lot of those things that are, you know, right up against medicine and interest is like you will behoove yourself to complete your medical degree and complete your residency, because that will just give you, you know, more street cred that you actually know what you're talking about. So if you're not successful with completing your medical degree or completing residency, then kind of some of your other passions that maybe you wanted to get into are jeopardized. So, you know, sometimes that means, you know, putting your writing to the side or whatever you may doing for that, maybe focusing on for that moment, and focus on your actual schoolwork. But there's always opportunities to get involved. I'm really heavy also into volunteering. And I remember in medical school, I would kind of feel weird when I wasn't like having any community engagement for like months and months. But there was always usually some opportunity to do like a one-time event and go for 2 hours and then come back and study. So figuring out how you can fit some of those small little events into your schedule is also helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually kind of going to be one of the next questions that we had, was just like some of the difficulties, I guess, that you have encountered in kind of maintaining those passions, right? We talk about EM being a full-time job, or residency in general, right? And but were there other, I guess, you know, barriers that you maybe encountered with kind of maintaining these passions that you hold near and dear to you? So if not, you know, work hours, maybe, I don't know, just, you know, mental fatigue, or anything really that you felt has come between, kind of, like I said, that you and maintaining the things that really bring you fulfillment.
I can touch on something briefly because like I'm interested in advocacy work, health equity work. especially in medical school, there were times where, I got some pushback. So I think it's important to know the institution you're operating within. Of course, I wouldn't say I was censored, but just being aware of the institution you're in, and the stuff that you're putting out there, because, there's different parties at play. And as Dr. Smith said, we need to graduate, get our MD or DO or whatever degree, finish residency, et cetera. And so I think, writing publicly about certain things, just be prepared for any type of backlash, especially if we're talking about a controversial topic. Not saying you shouldn't do it, but just being aware of that, and being prepared.
That's a great point that I just so glad was highlighted. Every institution usually has some policy around talking to media and different talking points, and some larger institutions even have people who will coach you through the process. I think that if you are going to be heavily in social media and really want to get your name out there, you have to be very mindful about what you are speaking on and the way you're speaking about it. So it doesn't hurt, especially if you're a medical student, it doesn't hurt to, briefly chat with someone at your institution who either may have that same media presence that you're looking to attain, or someone within the media department, if you go to a large enough institution, who can kind of guide you through, these are things you probably shouldn't say, this is what you can say, just so that you aren't jeopardizing any of your credentials or career.
As a male that has a podcast microphone and a podcast, most podcasts out there with dudes they're going to be some pretty toxic stuff, misogynistic. There's a lot of stuff that can be said, especially when you're talking for 30, 45 minutes a week. So for me, it's a challenge to make sure that everything I'm talking about in the show, it's there for positivity. I am trying to uplift and support medical students and everybody in the journey. But, am I asking every dude about their relationship and if they want to have kids, or am I just asking the woman that I have on the show? There's little things that I challenge myself, because I know literally everybody, when I interviewed for jobs, they asked me about this podcast, and all the content that you're putting out is being reviewed. The second part I'll add is that from a business perspective, are you doing work on the company time, depending on your academic institution or your private practice? They may have a social media clause. They may end up owning part of the stuff that you're doing if you're not careful and follow the rules and kind of know what you're working with.
Yeah, I echo everything everyone said. I also had a blog talking about patient stories, of course, de-identified and stuff in residency and in my intern year. And that was something that I had to do. What Dr. Smith said, I had to talk to, the media department at my university. I did my intern year at GW in DC, and basically, have them review the first few stories to make sure that the patients truly could not be identified. And I do think that's something that we have to be very careful about with social media nowadays. Everybody wants to post their before and after and their procedures and all these things. People are losing their licenses. People are getting into huge trouble for just being very cavalier on social media. And honestly, I support them getting in trouble, because I do think that it makes us look bad as physicians if we think it's okay to put patients' privacy or even their safety at risk, right? Like the dancing videos while being in the OR and things like that. Those are very dangerous, right? Someone's under anesthesia. Dr. Bradley can really talk about it, but you're extending their time under anesthesia to dance for a video. That's very concerning. So I'm happy people are losing licenses. But anyway, the point is, don't be that person. It's really important, no matter what your passion is, that patient safety has to come first when you're ever in a patient care environment. That has to be priority, or this is not really the business for us, right? We all took an oath. So I think that's number one. And then I wanted to touch on something a little separate. I think another barrier for me at different times has been just sometimes being discouraged in medicine, or sometimes that I felt really low in my medical journey. I didn't have the mental or emotional bandwidth to focus on poetry, right? So there's definitely been times where studying for exams or certain things didn't go my way, or I applied for, X program or whatever and didn't get in, that I was in a bad space. Or even, the reality of practicing medicine versus the theory of it, right? I think all of us go into medicine to help people to, be these shining lights in the community. And then you come across insurance, and you come across, billing and all these things that really take a lot of the inspiration out of it, right? And so I'm not discouraging anybody that's on their journey. I think that it's a worthwhile profession, but I definitely think there are a lot of things we have to make better about the profession to prevent burnout. And I do think that when someone is truly burnt out, or depressed, right, it does make it a lot harder to do things that you're interested in. And I definitely have experienced burnout on multiple occasions on my journey. And yeah, the first thing that goes is I don't have the energy to do things I care about, just kind of like scrapping through the day. So if you're noticing that you don't even have the energy, if you have the time, but you don't have the energy to do your passion, it might be a sign that you're experiencing burnout. And I definitely think it's important to reach out to mentors, reach out to a therapist, and just make sure that you're taking care of your mental health on this path.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, burnout was going to be one of the things that we talked about next. I'm starting to think that you have access to my questions. So yeah, just thinking about burnout, right? And the role that a passion can have in alleviating that, but then also maybe sometimes adding to that, right? Just I guess how has your passion either helped you with burnout, and or how have you all dealt with burnout in general, just either in residency, right, or now in attending life or in medical school? How have you guys dealt with burnout, and what advice do you have for some of the people watching who might be students, residents, physicians, about how to deal with that and or balance that with the things that they're passionate about?
I guess I can say, definitely, like I said, I've experienced burnout multiple times. I've experienced, needing to be in therapy. Definitely medical school. That's my first time seeing a therapist was med school, struggle. And, experiencing panic attacks and all those things. And I will say one of the most helpful things for me was a day in 7 to rest, right? It started for me as a religious practice growing up, right? So I'm, keep the Sabbath, I'm a Christian, and keep the Sabbath growing up. But I think one of the things I'm really thankful for that my parents instilled in me was this really guilt-free 24 hours a week of no work, which felt like a chore, or felt like something I didn't like as a kid because there were other implications of that. But as an adult, it's been immensely helpful for me because I don't have that guilt when I'm not working on my Sabbath, right? Because I think that I noticed, like, even with my friends in medical school, when if they decided to take time off, they're thinking about studying. They're like, oh, I have something to do, and they couldn't really enjoy that time. So I do recommend for everyone having some guilt-free time off regularly, to say, like, it doesn't matter if I have a test coming up next week. This is my guilt-free time off. And I do think you should have a start and end to it, right? Don't just guilt-free and just be off, indefinitely. But having those very specific hours that you don't have any work to do, I think is very helpful. And I do think in those times, sometimes it would be helpful to be like, okay, I know that on Sabbath or on my time off, like, I'm gonna get to focus on things I care about. Sometimes it wouldn't be creative output, right? Because I think sometimes if you're a creative person, sometimes working for that can be stressful too. So sometimes it was just going to consume other creatives' work, right? So I wouldn't always say I need to perform if I'm at an open mic. Sometimes it's just like going to listen to people and be inspired when I was feeling more burnt out or when I was feeling more tired, or even just watching people perform on YouTube or listening to music or going to, an open mic with music or comedy, and just seeing people live their regular lives, do things that they loved, could also be something that added joy to me and helped to rejuvenate me in those times that I was struggling with burnout.
I'll say, for me, your mission or your why that you're doing, whatever the topic of this is, your passions outside of medicine. And sometimes, that line blurs. Is a passion? Is it a side hustle? Because the side hustle culture is real. And let's be honest, who doesn't need more money when you're a medical student or a resident? And it's something that I struggle with. What is it? Why am I trying to get all these followers on Instagram? If you have an end goal in mind where you're monetizing that and you're doing your YouTube thing, then you have a mission, and stick to it, and make sure that that all aligns with your schoolwork and everything else. And over time, those missions and those goals may change. I wanted to be an influencer, and then I failed miserably So then I'm not trying to be an influencer anymore. And right now, if you go to my Instagram, you're going to see a bunch of my random lo-fi music that the same 7 people click like on. But that's what makes me happy right now. And that's what I post. I thought when I started podcasting, I was going to be Joe Rogan. It was going to be some side hustle money. And after the first 2 weeks goes by and 50 people liked it and I made 75 cents, I had to really think about, hey, what's the big deal with this podcast? And then when somebody like hit me in the DMs, it's like, yo, that episode was really helpful and I learned so much. It was like, okay, that's why, I'm doing this. And that has been the inspiration for the last 3 years to keep going, because eventually you'll be attending. And that's the litmus test for was that really just a side hustle, or was it something you're very passionate about, or just, why were you doing some of the things you're doing? And so that passion for helping people, I don't need money anymore. I don't need a side hustle. But I'm still doing the podcast because of those intangible benefits that I'm receiving. I'm still making music because it makes me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to put the Instagram in the private chat, we'll have the backstage person put it across this banner right here. If any of you guys want to, put your information there, we'll put it on the little banner so everyone watching, they can go listen to your music, they can read your poetry, that kind of stuff. They can watch your films. Just put it in the chat. We'll put it on the banner down there. Sorry, but didn't want to interrupt whoever wanted to speak next.
I can go next. I think for me, coming from 4th year of med school, had a lot of time off, was able to travel, but I was also really focused on working on my documentary, getting it out there. And so entering into residency, I have an issue with the term burnout because oftentimes I think it's like a proxy for like actual depression. So I actually don't like using that term personally because I think like it can cause people to not really like focus on what they're dealing with. So for me, I feel like I definitely experienced depression during intern year, which I've been very vocal about. So as Dr. Oyerinde said, I had really no creative energy. And I was okay with that because I think that was the first time that I was like, all right, I'm not really being driven by success right now. I'm trying to survive and I'm going to try to have some guilt-free rest. I'm still not great at it. So I'm going to try the 24-hour thing because I actually really like that. But I think now, like going back into 2nd year, still struggling with mental health, don't get me wrong. But, doing less ICU time, doing less off-service time, I feel like I've found my motivation back. But I very much reimagined the way that I work. I still take more time to just like literally not do anything. And then when it's time to work, it's time to work. But I think, again, I've very much redefined my definition of success and defining the things and values that truly like fill me up, make me happy. And then also just like, you have these passions, but they aren't necessarily your hobbies, right? Because as Dr. Bradley said, you're kind of making money from these things, right? Or they're fueling your career. So right now I'm really just trying to find hobbies that are not tied to career advancement, maybe taking up some pottery. I love traveling. I think it's really important to kind of have those hobbies and not have them conflated with those passions and things that advance your career, because I feel like that can also contribute to burnout, depression, mental health issues, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. Oyerinde said it really well about not feeling guilty. All of us on this call and everyone listening has to have always performed above and beyond to get to where you've been. There is probably not a underrepresented in medicine student who could tell you like, yeah, I just kind of showed up to class and took the MCAT and I just ended up here in medical school, right? Most of us had to work really hard to get where we were, either overcoming some type of family issue or social issue or academic issue, whatever it be. So I think for a lot of us, it can be so difficult to take time off because we feel like we're so used to working at 110% that even if we go down to 100%, we feel like we are failing and doing something wrong. And I know for myself, I have had to kind of divorce that idea from my mind that it is okay to sit on my couch for an hour and not do anything, try to just turn my mind off, chat with a friend, watch some mindless TV, do something that will allow me to mentally decompress. And recently I also got into trying to be more focused on physical health. So working out, getting outside, taking walks when I can. I'm not some fitness influencer where back is still big, but we gonna work it out and get that's a good way to mentally decompress. It's so nice to throw on a podcast, go outside, take an hour-long walk. Your stress will decrease. And that really has helped me to kind of find longevity. Now being an attending, the mental stress is real, that I really didn't anticipate.
I just want to say one last thing about that, what you just said, Dr. Smith, about now being an attending. It's so funny because we lie to ourselves the entire time on the journey that at the next stage, you'll finally just be chilling. I haven't hit that yet, and I feel like we have to find ways to decompress now, right? If you're not learning how to take care of yourself now, it's just not true that at the next stage that, oh, finally once I'm done with medical school, I'm going to be stress-free. No, residency could be potentially worse, depending, right? Or now that I'm an attending, now the stress of being the final say is like every single patient, I'm like, wait, like, whatever, like it really doesn't go away or end, right? So I really think it's, knowing how to take care of yourself, how to be happy, how to find contentment and joy in every situation, that is going to allow you to thrive in all of your situations, as opposed to waiting until you're done with step 2. There's just always another exam, or there's always another challenge that you have to figure out how to survive, or thrive.
You are so right. I think that, for everyone on the call, it does get better as an attending, but you still are trying to find balance. It is still, you have entered a difficult profession that is mentally taxing, can sometimes be physically taxing. It is never, a 9 to 5, not to say this is easy, but you're just on the computer, and you're dealing with patients' lives. And so that is always a big deal. So I love that you said that, Dr. Oyurene.
Yeah. So, so when you guys talk about like it never ending writing and certain things kind of continuing into attending life that maybe were there during residency and even during medical school. So with that, have there been with new hobbies or passions that maybe like that you've picked up that weren't necessarily there since like adolescence? And how did you go about like picking those up? Did you expose yourself to new things? Did you kind of like, go out of your way to find those things? Like how did you, if at all, find new hobbies or passions or things of that nature?
I think that the funny thing that happens when you have more disposable income, you find more places to put that disposable income. So I've expanded the number of instruments that I have, much to my wife's, she's not very happy. But I picked up synthesizers, and I have a couple of those, just kind of these weird instruments. And, it's not an extremely expensive hobby, but it has so much kind of return value for how much time that I spend on these different instruments. And now I have the money to pick up an extra keyboard every couple of years and then figure out how to play it. So I've picked up, continue to play bass guitar, picked up acoustic guitar, and most recently synthesizers since finishing residency.
I'll say, yeah, I need to talk to, Dr. Ade, because I'm kind of into the whole, like making some little documentary situation. So I have some ideas that I've written up. I actually did a bunch of, after residency, I took 9 months off before starting. Also highly recommend, taking some time. I took 9 months off and I traveled during that time. And I filmed a bunch of stuff on my iPhone and kept on I haven't edited any of it. So I need to talk to you about how you get the energy to do that. But literally was interviewing people that I was meeting in different places and just asking them certain questions about things. And so I think, I don't know that editing is my passion, but I do have like a mind for telling certain stories through like visual medium. So maybe I need to hire somebody to edit for me and I can just film. But anyway, I think I have kind of picked that up. And it's just more so because you get inspired sometimes seeing what other people do, right? Or you watch certain things on social media or in other places and you're like, man, I love that. Like, what could I create? Or how could I create something that resonates with me in a similar way? And so I think I picked that up. I'm definitely not good at that at all, but I love it. So yeah.
I got into traveling as well. So I don't travel as often as some other individuals, but I try to do at least one, decent international trip a year. This past year was the first time I had ever gone to Europe. So that was like a cool thing for me. Hopefully next year is the first time going to Africa. So I'm looking forward to that. So traveling, obviously as a resident, I got involved in traveling a little bit, but obviously your budget is different, your time is different. But I've always been big on, driving to the next city over, live in Philadelphia, DC's not far, New York isn't far. There's a lot of different places that you can go. And usually when I go to these cities, I am a lover of knowing more about my history, the history of the diaspora. So I usually visit some type of African American or African art museum and just enjoy learning and seeing more about my history and culture.
Echoing off of that, I've gotten into solo trips just because everyone has different schedules and it's been great. And then secondly, like during my 4th year, I started taking social media more seriously and social media entrepreneurship, working with brands, still like navigating my identity as a creator, because at one hand, I was like doing medical content. I'm really not into that anymore, to be honest. Like, I'm not going to show you a day in the life because a day in the life is chaotic. So I just feel like inauthentic doing that. So now I'm like trying to be more of a fashion makeup girl because I just find that a bit more sustainable in the long run. So we'll see. But like creating content I enjoy, but it's also draining at times. So, hopping in and out, the Instagram algorithm is not necessarily my friend. Hopped on TikTok as well. It's not my favorite app, but you got to diversify, your platform. So those are the few of the things that I've gone into.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess, right, already aware and have established your passions, right? So for those watching and for some of us that maybe haven't or or still trying to figure that out, I guess what advice do you have on really trying to figure out what you're passionate about or the things that can bring you fulfillment or solace during all the stressors of this journey through medicine?
I think, starting basic and just sitting down, taking out a piece of paper and writing down what do I like to do and what do I really not like to do, right? So if you like to write, you can put that in the like column. If you hate writing, then you put that in the don't like column, right? And then figuring out of the things that you like to do, then circling based on all these things that I like to do. When I am at my most tired, I have a test in 2 days and I'm just really, really studying. Which of these activities actually would fuel me or would I think about doing instead of studying? And it may be everything, but what would make you feel better and feel like you have taken some time away from studying and it rejuvenates you? And so circling those items and then trying to figure out what activities or what side hustle or passion driven activity can you garner from those things that you circled.
Yeah, I guess I was gonna say something similar, but not as eloquent as that. Like not with like writing it down. I was gonna say just like think about think about what brings you joy, or think about what you like. What Dr. Smith said I think was great. Like if you have an exam coming up, or if you're super stressed, which one of these things could you even imagine wanting to do at that time? Which it's tough because like we discussed earlier, if you're experiencing depression or if you're experiencing burnout, sometimes that can be tricky. But during the times that you're maybe feeling a little bit better, just trying to think like, what actually do I enjoy doing? What is not like what do I not have to like, oh, I have to get up and do this thing. And for some people, it's not like, a quote unquote creative thing, right? For some people, you might have a passion for video games. And, I feel like previous generations have disrespected that passion, but there are kids making millions playing video games on YouTube right now. So anyway, it's a thing. So, it might be watching movies. It might be watching films. Like that really might be a passion for you. It doesn't have to be creating something. Even though for a lot of us it's creativity, but for some people it's admiring stuff. Like some people just love to look at art, or some people just love to taste wine or to taste different types of chocolate. So I think also going outside the box for what a passion might be for you, because I think if you look on social media, you're seeing a bunch of creatives. You might think that your passion has to be in the creative space, when in reality, there's no limit on what your passion can be, or on what something that you enjoy can be. Or you might be like a jack of all trades that doesn't have one specific thing that just lights your fire, but you have a bunch of things that you kind of enjoy and you will put up, do and then put down. And that's totally fine too. And so just, being gentle with yourself and accepting the truth of who you are and not trying to fit into a mold that you see.
My advice would be to look around you, because there is a bunch of people out there who are doing exactly what you want to do, a portion of what you want to do. And, at least my experience has been pretty positive reaching out to people. I remember when I was first starting on my journey with writing, there was this one medical student, she had published in Glamour magazine. And so I DM'd her and I was like, how did you do this? Right. And I was able to publish in Glamour a couple weeks after that. And so I found that people have been pretty open, go to SNMA, it's a great networking opportunity for sure. And yeah, I think getting ideas from people, I've been very intentional about limiting my scrolling. So if I'm going to scroll, I'm like, all right, I've designated this time, and just seeing what people are up to, getting inspired. And then, shameless plug for my initiative that I'm starting, Creatives for Social Change in Medicine, to, further hone in on those passions. So yeah, that's my advice.
I'll say, while you're looking around and getting all the inspiration and advice, remember that comparison is the thief of joy. And I can wake up and say, I want to be a film creator like Dr. Osanubi, and I want a huge following on social media. I want to be a health equity lecturer. I want to be a spoken word artist. But realize that these passions took years to cultivate and to work on. You can do that if that's what you find your passion to be. But I realize I'll never be a pianist like Robert Glasper. That's the way life is. Realize that you are in X percentage of people that wanted to get into medical school, right? You're already beating significant odds. Just wouldn't be fair if you were like a professional pianist and we all have our own passions, but realize that it'll take work to get to where you want to be. Just because somebody's doing something doesn't mean you can't get there eventually. Just you gotta go with whatever works for you and whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was all wonderful, wonderful advice. So I think that was a really great closer to the discussion. We do have time. Again, there's no pressure. If you don't want to bless us with a poem, I'm not, we do have, I think there's 1.8 million viewers and they would really appreciate one. So there's no pressure though, it's just 1.8 million people that might be.
Not 1.8. Oh my God.
Yeah. So
not 1.8. I can do a poem. I'm trying to see. A lot of my poems are super deep. Let me do one that's light.
Yeah. No worries. We'll give you a proper introduction. We'll give you a proper introduction. Because interestingly enough, I used to host open mic nights. Right. It's gonna be. I feel like it'll be a great way to close the panel. We talk about everything about everyone's passions, and now we get to see one. If we had enough proper planning, we would have had Dr. Bradley play some music for us. But maybe next year, we'll do a concert or something like that. So, yes.
Okay.
All right. So, to the 1.9 million viewers watching, everyone clap it up right now. Clap it up right now. Clap it up right now. We have the Queen of Dermatology who is going to close out the night and bless us with a poem. So, if everyone could give her the floor, turn the phones off, stop talking, and just let her rock.
Okay, awesome. What am I gonna do? Okay. All right. This is called Black Culture Is. Black culture is hoop earrings, Slick bun to high heaven roasting session in the cul-de-sac until long after the streetlights came on. It is beatboxing with dark fists on school bus windows, stomping on the gray floors as we sped to school, ignoring the shouts of our bus drivers. We never listen to our bus drivers. We always mess with our bus drivers. Black culture is Motown. And Detroit Old Town cars, it is loud as hell and also quiet enough to hear the stars sing their soprano lullabies as the sun takes its daily nap. It is rap as a means of resistance. It is Yoruba, the language of my ancestors. It is both nowhere and everywhere the trap be. It is Nuck If You Buck meets Killing Me Softly and Playing Before I Let You Go to end every party. Black culture is feeling betrayed by your DNA if you don't know how to dance, or braid, or cook, or play spades. It is getting your black card vote for cutting your partner while playing spades. It is Wale Soyinka and Maya Angelou, and Michael Jackson, the dark-skinned one, and Michael Jackson, the light-skinned one. It is Big Booty Judy and Queen and Slim like Lupita and Nyong'o. It is Bongo. It is Afro-Latinas and Blasians and looking up to the Haitians for fighting off the French. It is kicking out Britain only to obsess over the royals in Britain. It is desiring both progress and apology, desiring both reprieve and reparation. It is reclaiming our history. It is poetry. It is 90s hip hop and 2000s R&B and feeling out of place for liking rock and country. It is as much acoustic guitar as it is bass. It is as much anime as it is a full set of nails and a full face beat. It's the vibe in the air on a New Orleans street. It is knowing that Nigeria Jollof will always top Ghana's. It is Cape Town and Nairobi and Houston and Punta Cana. It is Mahalia Jackson and Shirley Caesar and waiting for Kirk Franklin to finally sing on a track. It is sitting in church as a kid, paying no attention, passing notes with your friends in the back. It is the sound of an organ filling the sanctuary. It is the sound of my grandmother singing. It is prayer. It is getting tired of praying. It is feeling powerful and still powerless all the same. It is wondering if a black mother cries under the bed sheets and no one is there to listen, does it even make a sound? It is growing sick of your sadness while feeling guilty for your joy, but my word, Black culture is great joy. Black culture is something that cannot be defined. It defines peoples and societies and ways of being. It's that inner circle everybody hates on but secretly wants to be in. It is both ebonics and hooked on phonics. It is both shy and extroverted. It is both collard greens and coleslaw. If that's how you like it, it's whatever and whoever and however the Black person in the room is at that time, and it cannot be put in a box. It is the box that connects us across time and space and place. For wherever you find humanity, you will find it. And it cannot be put down. It cannot be pinned down. It will not be held down. Black culture is. Thank y'all.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for blessing us with that. And thank you to all of our panelists for coming out and speaking with us, sharing your wisdom. And I hope, all the 10.8 million viewers now that it's jumped up to in the past couple minutes, I hope they can all see the diversity in all our talents and why it's so important to continue, maintaining and cultivating your passions, because this, that the next time we'll see her, she'll probably be performing that at the BT Awards. You never know. There's a lot of talent here, and thank you so much for just speaking with us and just reminding us of the importance of maintaining your passions and kind of knowing who you are and everything. So yeah, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you guys a little longer. I know we ran a minute over, but I think it was worth it. So again, thank you all so much. Have a great night.